Most athletic careers are short, and they're way less lucrative than you might believe. Many professional athletes find regular employment once their careers end. Even some of the most successful athletes get post-retirement jobs just because they want to. Stay tuned until the end to see which Basketball Hall of Famer is now a crossing guard. Before we begin, like this video and subscribe to The Riches for more stories of celebrities who are just like us. Now here are retired athletes who now work normal jobs. Shandon Anderson. Shandon Anderson spent 10 years in the NBA, playing for the Utah Jazz, Houston Rockets, New York Knicks, and Miami Heat. Anderson, the 6'6" swingman, was a fine player. He was a starter in both seasons with Houston and averaged 12.3 points per game in his best year. After winning a championship with the Heat in 2006, Anderson retired and made one of the oddest career changes for a former professional athlete. He became a vegan chef. After noticing the shortage of restaurants that offered vegan diets, Anderson, the longtime vegetarian, knew what he had to do. He attended the Living Light Culinary Institute in Fort Bragg, California, before heading to the Natural Gourmet Institute in New York. It was in New York where Anderson completed his internship at Candle 79, which was the city's top organic restaurant. Then, in 2014, Anderson opened Drink Art, a vegan-focused restaurant in Atlanta, Georgia. Anderson served as the head chef and offered more vegan meals than Atlanta had ever seen. Though the restaurant received rave reviews, Anderson was forced to close shop at the end of 2014. Clint Malarchuk. Clint Malarchuk was a goalie who played 11 years in the NHL. Though he had a respectable career backstopping teams like the Washington Capitals and Buffalo Sabres, a single non-athletic related incident defined his career and, as it turns out, his life. On March 22, 1989, in a game between the Buffalo Sabres and St. Louis Blues, Malarchuk's jugular vein was cut with a skate blade, creating one of the most disturbing moments in sports history. The sight was so horrific that 11 spectators fainted and 3 players vomited. Malarchuk's life was saved by a quick on-his-feet trainer who pinched the artery until medical professionals could intervene. Surprisingly, Malarchuk was back on the ice within a week and played in the NHL for several subsequent years. However, upon retirement, Malarchuk was plagued by PTSD and depression, which culminated in an attempt to take his own life. Thankfully, he recovered, gained control of his circumstances, and now works as a veterinarian technician and certified horse dentist. He even runs a horse dentistry practice out of his home. When he's not busy checking for equine cavities, Malarchuk tours the country speaking to audiences about mental health and addiction. McKayla Maroney. McKayla Maroney is only 22 years old, but she's already led a complicated life. McKayla entered professional gymnastics at 15, and just a year later she became part of the U.S. Olympics gymnastics team that competed in London in 2012. A gold and silver medal later, McKayla was on top of the world. She was by far the world's most famous gymnast, and her public profile ballooned when a meme of her unimpressed expression circulated online. It even led to a legendary photo op with Barack Obama, who copied her iconic pose. Maroney retired from gymnastics in 2016, but stayed in the spotlight as a social media star thanks to her good looks. However, a very sad and very serious side of McKayla captured our attention in 2017, as the gymnast came out as one of the 250 young women who had been abused by USA Gymnastics doctor Larry Nassar. Maroney stated that Nassar had abused her hundreds of times. Combine that with hundreds of other victims, many of whom were children, and you have the worst abuse scandal in the history of professional sports. After Nassar was imprisoned, Maroney found a new calling. She's decided to work as a public advocate for the prevention of sexual abuse. Vin Baker. You may or may not have heard of Vin Baker. The 6'11" power forward played for several NBA teams from 1993 to 2016, spending the longest periods with the Milwaukee Bucks and Seattle Supersonics. However, Baker was no bench warmer. He was an under-the-radar superstar, twice averaging 20-plus points in a season and played in 4 consecutive All-Star games. But what's most significant is that Baker's success coincided with an explosion of NBA salary amounts. Baker's career basketball earnings exceed $100 million, but it was all for naught. Alcoholism and irresponsible spending made the former Olympic gold medalist broke not long after retirement. It was then that he made a desperate call to Starbucks chairman Howard Schultz, who owned the Seattle Supersonics when Baker played for the team. Thanks to Schultz, Baker traded his headband for a visor, becoming a shift manager at his local Starbucks. He has since turned his life around and has worked as a summer camp director, a sportscaster, and most recently as an assistant coach for the Milwaukee Bucks. He's also an author, and you can buy Baker's book detailing his journey from basketball player to barista. Tomas Sandstrom. You may notice that there's a disproportionate amount of hockey players on this list. Besides a blue-collar ethic that runs through the sport, the main reason is that NHL players are paid less than athletes from other major sports leagues, and the gap was even greater in the 80s when the average player made $100,000. This is when Tomas Sandstrom played. However, financial difficulty wasn't the reason for Sandstrom's career change. After spending 15 years in the NHL as a high-scoring forward known for his time on the Gretzky-led Los Angeles Kings, Tomas Sandstrom retired and quickly became bored of his sedentary lifestyle. Though he was living a great post-hockey life in Sweden, living off of his comfortable savings, he felt he needed more meaning in his life. So Sandstrom became a firefighter, an occupation he still holds today. Of course, since where he lives has only 7,000 residents, there probably aren't too many emergencies, but we're not disparaging the former NHLer. Tomas is helping the community in plenty of ways, and in turn, the community is helping the hockey star. David Wells. Wells is considered one of the premier left-handed pitchers of the modern era, a designation he earned during a 20-year career with the Toronto Blue Jays, New York Yankees, and Detroit Tigers, among others. He played in 3 MLB All-Star games, won 2 World Series, and was twice the second runner-up for the Cy Young Award for Best Pitcher. Most notably, Wells pitched a perfect game in 1998, a feat that's only been done 23 times in Major League Baseball's 150-year history. Wells had stints in sportscasting, appearing as an analyst on TBS, and spent a brief time hosting the interview show Cheap Seats on FoxSports.com. It wasn't until 2012 that Wells found his post-retirement calling, high school coaching. Wells began as a pitching coach for his old high school team, and in 2014 he was promoted to head coach, a position he still occupies, despite receiving offers to coach actual MLB teams. However, he's content coaching at Point Loma High School on the David Wells Field. He must be the only person to coach on a field that was named after him. Bryant Reeves. Bryant Reeves became one of the most promising centers in NBA history after an improbable upbringing. Reeves was raised in Gans, Oklahoma, a town of 300 that's hidden away from the allure of professional sports. However, Reeves' size couldn't help but attract notice from people outside the farming town. Reeves grew to 7 feet and weighed nearly 300 pounds, a size that gave him a roster position on the Oklahoma State University basketball team. It was there that Reeves gained the nickname Big Country, which stemmed from a teammate observing how excited Reeves was on his first cross-country flight. After a strong career at OSU, Reeves was selected by the Vancouver Grizzlies 6th overall in the 1995 NBA Draft and had 3 stellar seasons in the NBA. However, back problems and weight issues began to hamper the imposing center, and he was out of the league by age 28. This was not a huge problem for Reeves. Big Country went back to his roots, becoming a cowboy. Brian Finley. As a star goalie for one of Canada's top junior leagues, Brian Finley became a highly regarded NHL prospect, and this is where his problems began. In 1999, the 6'4" netminder was drafted in the first round, 6th overall, by the Nashville Predators, a team that regarded Finley as its key to the future. This distinction immediately overwhelmed the teenager, and a rocky professional career ensued. He would end up playing only 4 games in the NHL. He spent longer periods in the American Hockey League and East Coast Hockey League and achieved a bit of success, but injuries and confidence issues made performing at the NHL level impossible. At age 26, Finley decided to retire from professional hockey and started a different career in which he became much more successful: law enforcement. Finley became a police officer in 2009 and serves in the York region of Toronto, Ontario. A big promotion followed, and the former NHL goalie now works as a detective constable in the Personal Crimes Division. Napoleon Kaufman. Napoleon Kaufman was 5'9" and 185 pounds, yet had a successful career in the NFL. After being drafted 18th overall in 1995, Kaufman played his entire career for the Oakland Raiders as a running back, accumulating 12 rushing touchdowns and nearly 5,000 yards. However, after only 5 seasons in the NFL, the 27-year-old suddenly retired from one of the most lucrative professions in America. The reason? Jesus. Napoleon had already served as the Raiders' chaplain while simultaneously playing for the team. He even baptized 2 teammates in the jacuzzi of their practice facility. In 2001, he decided he'd sacrifice one profession for another, which is an easy decision for any Christian. More than just being a chaplain, Napoleon became a minister of the Well Christian Community Church in Livermore, California, which he founded in 2003. Though the church started with just 15 families, Kaufman now preaches to over 1,000 people at an 83,000 square foot facility. This is a rare case of a professional athlete becoming just as successful in a different occupation. Adrian Dantley. You may notice that many superstar athletes need something to do after retirement, even if their finances are sound. Adrian Dantley represents one of these cases. Dantley spent 15 years in the NBA and was one of the highest-scoring players of the 1980s. In 4 straight seasons, Dantley surpassed 30 points per game, finishing first in the NBA in 2 of those seasons, beating NBA legends like Larry Bird and Julius Erving. After retirement, Adrian was named to the Basketball Hall of Fame, and he still maintains a pretty solid legacy. Dantley ranks 16th in career points per game in NBA history. He also served as an assistant coach for the Denver Nuggets for several years, further inflating his net worth. In 2013, after years away from basketball, 57-year-old Dantley became a crossing guard in his town of Silver Spring, Maryland. He works an hour a day at Eastern Middle School and New Hampshire Estates Elementary School. The position pays $14,000 a year, but it's not about the money for Dantley, whose pension is probably 7 times that. It's about helping kids, but the health benefits are a nice perk. And that's all for retired athletes who now work normal jobs. What other athletes with a 9-to-5 do you know of? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.